like in practice. Across Kenya, our colleagues in the UN country team, led by my colleague Stephen Jackson, the UN resident coordinator, continue to work closely with the government and people of Kenya, focus on efficiency, constructive collaboration, scale and impact on sustainable development goals. They support the achievements of Kenya's stated development aspiration and provide humanitarian assistance. Against this background, let me be very clear. There is no change to the United Nations status in Kenya. Nairobi's role as a United Nations headquarters and multilateral hub was decided by the UN General Assembly. And despite some financial challenges, this mandate remains secure and strong. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, as some of you may know, this is the last annual meet and greet that the UN resident coordinator Stephen Jackson will be attending, as he will be moving on to a new assignment in a couple of months. On behalf of the UN family in Kenya, I thank him for his service, his contribution, and for his cordiality, and we collectively wish him the very best. I'd like to close by thanking the government of Kenya for its steadfast commitment to the United Nations, and as the organization continues to reform, to serve the people of the world, we shall continue to work together to maintain Nairobi as a multilateral hub it is. I would also like to thank the diplomatic community here in Nairobi, in New York, and in capitals around the world for your steadfast engagement and support over the years in protecting and strengthening Nairobi as a UN duty station and global headquarters, including through your advocacy in the UN governing and decision-making bodies in New York and Geneva. Your continued commitment to multilateralism ensure that Nairobi remains a vibrant and indispensable center for the work of the United Nations today and for generations yet to come. Thank you, Asante Sana.
Another round of applause for Zainab. And with your permission, Your Excellency, let's also put our hands together for Stephen Jackson for his great service to the Republic. It's now my pleasure and honor, Your Excellency, to request Dr. Musalia Mudavadi, the Prime Cabinet Secretary and Cabinet Secretary for Foreign and Diaspora Affairs, to make his remarks, and thereafter to invite Your Excellency. Thank you, sir.
Your Excellency, Dr. William Samoei Ruto, President of the Republic of Kenya and Commander-in-Chief of the Defense Forces of Kenya. Your Excellencies, the Dean of the Diplomatic Corps, the Director General of the United Nations, Excellencies, Ambassadors and High Commissioners, representatives of international organizations, my Kenyan colleagues who are here present, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Today is a momentous occasion as we mark the second annual New Year diplomatic address by His Excellency the President of the Republic of Kenya. This initiative is not only a tradition that we want to cultivate in our diplomatic calendar, but also a testament of the value and significance we attach to our engagement with the resident diplomatic corps. Over the past 63 years, Kenya has seen expansion of her diplomatic footprint to 70 diplomatic missions with multiple accreditations, 4 consulate generals, 2 missions in Nairobi, 1 liaison office, and 33 honorary consuls spread across the globe. Similarly, Kenya is servicing 93 resident diplomatic missions, 36 non-resident missions, 48 UN agencies, and 113 intergovernmental and international organizations hosted in Kenya. Indeed, our fidelity and reliability and success in global affairs engenders and reinforces our confidence, pride, and dignity as a people. We have built a republic that continues to win respect of our peers globally. In this regard, Kenya will continue honoring her international obligations in tandem with foreign policy guidance of His Excellency the President, and also in accordance with our constitutional mandate. Today is not my day. It is for us to get the address from the President. However, let me just point out 2 or 3 things. One, since President Ruto took over the leadership of the country in the last election, he has had 80 engagements outbound and 48 inbound to date. We have been able to execute about 269 memoranda of understanding with different entities, with your countries, and with various international organizations. We have had several visits. We intend to have more, but I will leave that to His Excellency the President to elaborate. But clearly, his diplomatic engagements have not eased whatsoever, even as we move forward to a very eventful calendar period for us in Kenya. His diplomatic engagements continue to engage him. In a few days' time, he'll be leading Kenya's delegation to the African Union Summit. But I just want to thank you for heeding his call and being part of this conversation that he's going to have with yourselves. We look forward to continued consolidation of our partnerships. Ladies and gentlemen, if you could be upstanding so that we can now invite His Excellency the President to make his remarks and engage with us. Asante sana.
Thank you very much. Let's take our seats. Good morning, everybody. I think I should give my address in Kiswahili because I have tried to encourage as many of us to learn Kiswahili. It is a language spoken in, I think, almost 12 countries in our region. But I will spare you that today only. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to welcome you, and I thank you most sincerely for accepting my invitation and taking time to join me this morning. I know that we have established a tradition that we will be engaging with ambassadors, high commissioners, representatives of various global international organizations that are resident in Kenya as a way of building bridges so that we can consolidate our relationship and understand each other more, and so that you can be able to represent not just your countries, but also understand us so that we can better enhance our partnership. That's why we established this annual engagement as a deliberate and regular feature of our diplomatic calendar in recognition of the essential role that sustained consultations with resident diplomatic corps plays in advancing cooperation and understanding. This gathering, therefore, offers us a timely opportunity to reflect together on the significant developments of the past year at the national level, on the regional front, and we all understand what has been going on globally, so that we may proceed with a shared understanding of the realities shaping our relations and our responsibilities. Excellencies, 2025 marked a defining phase in Kenya's socio-economic development journey. It stands out as a period when many of the reforms and strategic initiatives undertaken by this administration began to yield measurable and visible results. Across key sectors, policy choices have translated into tangible progress, affirming both the soundness of our direction and the resilience of our people. These gains have strengthened confidence in the course of our economy, deepened social cohesion, and laid firmer foundation for inclusive and sustainable growth in the years ahead. Central to the progress recorded in the past year is the continued expansion of some of our signature projects. Just to give you maybe 3 or 4 areas that were of critical concern to this administration. As we all understand, we emerged in 2022 from the adverse effects of COVID, from the serious challenges that came as a result of the situation of conflict in Europe, and the many other commodity issues that came into play. And as a result, most of our economies were constrained. Our fiscal space was limited, and debt became a very serious challenge to many countries, including Kenya. In fact, statistics showed that Kenya had one of the biggest Eurobond in our part of the world. And many people were wondering. I remember even the Secretary General of the United Nations, my friend Antonio Guterres, asking me, what's going to happen when this thing falls apart and Kenya defaults? Because to many, it was no longer if, it was when. But by God's grace, we managed to consolidate our economy. Kenya actually was listed to be among 6 countries that would default. Fortunately for us, 5 of our colleagues defaulted, Kenya did not. And we had to make very difficult policy choices, sometimes very uncomfortable. I remember my first assignment when I sat in a room called number 6 in that building was to reduce our budget by 300 billion shillings and to put a stop to some of the subsidies on fuel, on unga, that weren't really getting to the people, but costing us an arm and a leg. Today, sorry, thank you. Today, with confidence, I think we have taken the corner. Our economy is much more stable than it was at that time, as you're all aware. Our inflation, which was way around 9%, now is at 4.4, 4.5. Our exchange rate that had run amok is now stabilized for the last year and a half, almost 2 years actually, at 128, 129. and our dollar reserves, which had also dwindled to about $5.7 billion in 2022, we now have the highest foreign exchange reserves in Kenya's history at $12.3 billion. So we have, with the support and encouragement of many of friends and partners, we have managed to consolidate our economy. We still have a lot to do on it to make sure that we avoid the pitfalls of the past. The policy choices have sometimes been uncomfortable, but I want to say absolutely necessary, because unless we did that, we would have gone the direction many of our colleagues went. Number two, we took the decision that we needed to stabilize food security in our country. The biggest challenge that I encountered when I came into office was the price of stable food. Many of you witnessed people in the streets with sufurias. I know you know what sufurias are on their heads, and that kind of situation. We've had to register all farmers. Today we have a register of 7.1, I think by this month, 7.2 million farmers. We are now giving out fertilizer on voucher. We are working on ensuring that reforming actually the whole agricultural sector. We had challenges with brokers and cartels and people who had cornered the agricultural sector. We have cleaned up our sugar sector. Many of you remember, those of us who are members of COMESA, Kenya has been asking for COMESA safeguards for the last almost 20 years. But I can now confidently say that we have reformed the sugar sector, and we have 200,000 new farmland on sugar. We have registered and licensed another 5 sugar mills. We have enhanced our production from about 500,000 tons to 815,000 metric tons. Hopefully this year we intend to get to 1 million tons. And in another year or two, Kenya will be a net exporter of sugar. That is our plan. And so have we with coffee and tea and milk. And we have seen those sectors grow. And I want to thank many friends, development partners. The World Bank have come through for us in the agricultural sector. And we have made demonstrable progress. In fact, our staple food maize, we have increased our production from about 44 million bags in 2022 to 75 million bags this year. Again, the highest in Kenya's history. As you're all aware, we had also a very big challenge with education. Close to 23 universities were technically insolvent because the funding model that existed did not work. We had challenges with the competence-based curriculum. There was a misalignment between teachers, students, and other stakeholders. And that is why I immediately, upon coming into office, I set up a presidential working party that gave us recommendations. We have implemented those recommendations and aligned them with our manifesto. And that has seen us build an extra 23,000 classrooms. I must again commend the World Bank for coming through to us, for partnering with us in the building of those new classrooms. We have hired an extra 100,000 teachers in the last 3 years. In fact, 1/3 of all the teachers teaching in Kenya today were hired in the last 3 years to close the gap on teacher-student ratio. We still have a small challenge on laboratories. Again, I want to thank development partners for coming through with us. We are now constructing 1,600 laboratories in different schools, especially those in rural areas and some in our informal settlements. And we've rolled out a new student-centered funding model for our technical, middle level, and higher education, including universities. Today, if you ask any vice chancellor in any university, they will tell you that while they weren't able to pay staff in 2022, today they can pay their staff, they can pay their suppliers, they can pay their pay as you earn, and most of the universities that were technically insolvent are now walking out of insolvency. We've had also to re-engineer, as you know, our health sector. We did undertake to the country that we were going to. In fact, my commitment was to reform the National Health Insurance Fund. But when we went through the motions, it became impossible to reform it. So we had to re-engineer it altogether. So we had to replace the law. And because we had tried that so many times, we tried it with my predecessor, it didn't work. So this time round, we decided to overhaul, actually, to change the whole setup. We replaced the NHIF law with 5 pieces of legislation. And today, Kenyans that are registered on the SHA portal are 29.3 million, up from just under 8 million under the National Hospital Insurance Fund. Again, I want to commend many development partners that have come through to support our health program. The latest being the United States that signed with us a health program that will avail over the next 5 years about 200 billion Kenya shillings, and all the other friends that have also supported our health, especially social protection and many other spaces. We have also undertaken a very robust job creation program, from housing to digital jobs to export of labor to what we are doing in the Nyota program. It's a whole array. I can confirm to you that we have 1.5 million people today working who are not working in 2022. In our housing program, for example, we have close to 500,000 people working today in the constructions that are going on in our markets, in our hostels, in our affordable housing. I guess you see, slowly Kenya is turning into a construction site. Right from State House here, there is a construction going on. We have a construction going on in Talanta Stadium, in Bomas, in our markets. The roads are also going on. So we're trying to push all levers to make sure that we consolidate our gains as a country. And I will not fail to commend the UN bodies, representatives of nations who are friends of Kenya. You have come through for us in different facets, in different ways, to support this undertaking that is our responsibility as Kenyans, but you have come to support us as friends of this nation. And we are, on behalf of the people of Kenya, I want to say we are truly, truly grateful to all of you. As I outlined in my State of the Nation address last year, we committed ourselves to a new ambitious 10-year national transformation program. Because in my estimation, much as we have made some significant progress in all the spaces we have in terms of consolidating our economy, consolidating our food security, looking at our social protection, whether it is ensuring that we have more resources in our schools, undertaking a much more robust health development framework. And I must say the private sector has really come through to support our interventions. I was really pleasantly surprised that, for example, in our housing program, we now have signed contracts of maybe $4.5 billion. This is close to 650 billion Kenya shillings. And this we have done, and except one, all the contractors are actually Kenyans, Kenyan farms, except one. And I'm talking about close to 300 contractors. So the housing program has largely been undertaken. The markets program, the development of hostels has been undertaken by Kenyan contractors, building capacity locally. But I must say they have learned a lot from their partners from outside Kenya. We did also undertake one very important subject that is a conversation that has been going on in Kenya. The culture of saving. You know, we've had not a very good culture of saving. So it is one of the issues that I undertook that I would try and drive. I am very happy that our social security, which we have built over the years. In 2022, we had 312 billion shillings in our social security. Today, 3 years later, because we changed the contribution structure and we brought many more people into the equation. In the last 3 years, we have grown our social security fund from 312 to 670 billion this year. We believe that next year we will get to 1 trillion, and slowly but surely we will build enough resources for us to be able to manage the challenges of access to patient capital that we can use to underwrite our development, even as we get support from partners and friends and work with the private sector as well. But as I said, even with what we have done, it is not sufficient. We need to look ahead. And looking ahead, we have, as I stated in the State of the Nation address, we are focused on doing 3 fundamental things, interventions, for us to be able to lift our country to the next level. Number 1 is we need to generate energy. As you are aware, we have 3,300 megawatts in our grid today. For us to undertake the kind of technology transition, industrialization, and manufacturing that is necessary for us to move the country to the next level, we need energy. And we have good reserves of renewable energy in geothermal. I think we have capacity of another 10,000 megawatts. We have another 20,000, maybe more, of wind energy. We have a lot more of solar. So we anticipate to generate 10,000 megawatts of energy in the next 7 years. That is the plan. This will require not just public money. Of course, we are going to provide public money, but we will need to crowd in private sector money, money from other entities, investors, pension funds, venture capital, and many other people who have resources to invest in that space. Number 2 is we need to expand our infrastructure. We're still not yet there. If you look at our infrastructure, we have developed 20,000 kilometers of tarmac in the last 60 years. Our intention is to develop another 28,000 in the next 7 years, to double the number of tarmac roads in Kenya. We already are on course. We have mapped out what the areas are, and we believe that we can raise the resources to undertake this transformation. That includes the modernization of our airports, starting with Jomo Kenyatta, extending the railway from Naivasha to Kisumu and onward to Uganda, then to the region. Actually, the railway, I think we've already set a date. We have found the resources, both public and private. So we will be starting the construction and launching the same in March this year. Again, we have finalized the discussions with the airport. We also want to modernize our airport. All of you know we don't have much of an airport, you know. Our airport is, the arrival is on the tarmac. So, and it's way, way overdue. You know, we should have done this maybe 15 years ago. So we want to begin that process of construction of a new airport under a framework that is going to bring public sector, private sector concessionaires. And I am hoping that we can begin that before June this year. So again, that whole infrastructure development is one thing that we are focused on achieving. And I'm saying this because we will require partners. We will require private sector partners. We will require some of your investment arms of your nations, whether at the airport, on the railway, on some of the toll roads that we are doing, the expressway that we are planning to Thika and other areas. So there is opportunity for us to work with you. There are opportunities for us to strengthen our partnerships, both at the public to public level, but also public to private. And I will be looking forward to working with yourselves so that we can do this together. And then number 3 is, as you know, Kenya is an agricultural country. We are almost exhausting the land that we can farm under rain-fed agriculture, and therefore it is absolutely necessary for us to now venture into more of water harvesting, water storage, irrigation technology. That is the space we want to go into. So there is also opportunity for us to work with partners, both in public and private, to do some of the mega dams that we are focused on doing. I know there is a lot of discussion together with our public-private partnership unit at the Treasury and all the other partners and friends. So we are focused on doing another 50 mega dams, maybe 200 medium-level dams and 1,000 or so micro dams. So again, there will be opportunity for us. And also irrigation technology is something that we will be focused on. And I know many of your countries, I have visited some of them, have irrigation technology that we can share and learn from one another and create partnerships that can help us achieve our intentions and contribute not just to food security in Kenya, but also through exports contribute to food security elsewhere. We will be in Parliament this week as part of developing the necessary infrastructure for us to undertake this heavy transformation. We are setting up a National Infrastructure Fund. I have had discussions with the IFC. I have had discussions with the World Bank. I have had discussions with the Africa Development Bank. We've had conversations with the Afri-Exim Bank and many other partners. And they have given us a lot of support in terms of ideas, in terms of how we can use the public resources that we have, the public assets that we have in a much more structured manner, in a manner that we can use the resources and assets that we have to crowd in resources from the private sector and from other sources to be able to drive our development. We've also learned the hard way that the Constitution mandates us that we must be intentional on making sure that there is intergenerational equity. That we don't, whatever we have today, we need to think about not just today, but we need to think about tomorrow and the generations that will come after us. I was in Kwale, for example, this week actually, on Friday. And when I met the leadership in Kwale, they told me, look, Mr. President, we had titanium in Kwale. We exploited titanium. It got finished. The mine is now closed. And there is no sign of that titanium anywhere today. Some generations in the future will ask us, there was titanium in Kenya, what happened? You people ate the whole of it and left nothing for us. So we're going to Parliament to actualize a new legislation, the Sovereign Wealth Fund, that will now provide mechanisms for making sure that whatever it is that we do now, whether through privatization or any other resources, we have a fund that takes care of the generations that will come after us. Again, we have areas that we will learn from some of you. We will work together so that the Sovereign Wealth Fund will secure intergenerational equity and enhance resilience to external shocks through disciplined, transparent, and long-term stewardship of national resources. Excellencies, in 2025, Kenya continued to deepen bilateral relations across Europe, the Middle East, Africa, Asia, and the Americas. These engagements strengthened cooperation in trade, investment, security, migration, climate action, education, and technology, while expanding people-to-people exchanges. I am very happy that in the last 3 years we have been able to conclude, sign, ratify the Economic Partnership Agreement with Europe. It was quite a very proud moment to sign that contract here. We have also concluded the CEPA agreement with the UAE. We have also almost concluded now the agreement with China. And my Minister for Trade will be leaving the day after tomorrow to conclude the negotiation, the bilateral trade agreement with the United States. And we are aligning more so that we can build a stronger ecosystem of trade partnerships that will allow us to do more with many friends across the globe. We look forward to further widening and deepening diplomatic engagement in 2026 as we advance bilateral cooperation frameworks globally, promote peace and security, strengthen trade and investment ties, expand scientific, technological, and cultural exchanges, foster regional integration, facilitate labor mobility, and harness collective efforts towards shared continental and multilateral aspirations. The principles of Pan-Africanism, good neighborliness, and regionalism continues to shape our diplomacy. Kenya currently serves as the chair of the East African Community and will chair the Common Markets for Eastern and Southern Africa Authority later this year. These responsibilities align with Kenya's long-term standing view that enhanced regional cooperation remains central to Africa's economic transformation and sustainable development in general. At the continental level, Kenya continues to contribute to Africa's institutional strengthening. As African Union champion for institutional reform, we have supported ongoing efforts to enhance the effectiveness, the credibility, and responsiveness of the Union, particularly in the areas of peace, governance, and financing. Again, let me appreciate the support to the African Union by many partners here. And to support what you have done over the years, we are having a very candid conversation as African leaders, and I will be presenting a report on what we have managed to put together. Number one, to do more on funding the African Union. We have developed alternative mechanisms of trying to make sure that we fund the African Union 100% by ourselves, so that whatever partnership exists will be additional to what we are doing as leaders and as countries in this continent. Number two, we are looking at the peace and security infrastructure. The peace fund we have at the AU require re-engineering. We have made proposals, and we will ask for support from friends and partners so that African peace interventions, as was passed by the UN resolution, I think 2279 or thereabout, that says that African Union or African peace security interventions will be funded by assessed contributions of the UN, so that we can be able to take charge of the hotspots in our region. But aside from that, we are also looking at what we can do on the African standby force to be able to manage the security challenges in our region more. I will be making this presentation to my colleagues this weekend. We are also looking at making the African Union much more accountable. Today, there is a disconnect between the Pan-African Parliament and the executive institution of the African Union. We want to see how budgets can be approved, improve the efficacy of the Pan-African Parliament, and we've made concrete proposals on that, how that can be done. And then finally, we want to create much more accountability by finally bringing into force the African Court of Justice. Today, if there are disputes between institutions of the AU, there is no mechanism of adjudicating. Today, if there are disputes between countries, there is no mechanism of adjudication. Thankfully, the instruments for the establishment of the African Court of Justice have already been ratified. They have already been signed. What is only remaining is the actualization. So again, we will be making those proposals. In addition, as chair of the Committee of African Heads of State on Climate Change, Kenya has advanced the coordinated African position on climate action, climate finance, and adaptation, ensuring that Africa's priorities are clearly articulated and pursued in unity with global processes. Kenya also looks forward to hosting the Africa France Summit in May this year, which will showcase Africa's innovative capacity and demonstrate the strength of cross-continental partnerships. It will be the first time that an Anglophone country will be hosting a French Africa opportunity for us to finally reduce the sharp edges between Francophone and Anglophone and try and consolidate our partnerships as one region. There will be private sector engagement. We are trying to get the highest level of participation from African entrepreneurs, business people, and investors, and to see how we can consolidate that position. I have talked to colleagues around the continent, and we are making very good progress on colleagues that will be attending. We will also host the 4th EAC COMESA SADC Tripartite Summit this year, which is expected to significantly advance the regional integration agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, regional peace and security remains a core focus of Kenya's foreign policy. Stability in the Horn of Africa and the Great Lakes region is inseparable from our own national security, economic prospects, and development trajectory. Kenya, therefore, remains actively engaged in regional and continental efforts to prevent conflict escalation, strengthen governance, and build resilience in fragile and conflict-affected areas. In the Great Lakes region, Kenya has played an active role in efforts to reduce tensions and advance dialogue among parties in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Together with His Excellency Emerson Mnangagwa, President of the Republic of Zimbabwe, I co-chaired several EAC SADC summits, which culminated in the merger of the Nairobi and Luanda processes, strengthening coherence and reaffirming regional ownership of this peace framework. In December last year, I also witnessed the signing of the Washington Accord for Peace and Prosperity between the governments of the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda, marking an important diplomatic milestone. Kenya maintains that international initiatives, including the Washington and Doha processes, must reinforce and remain aligned with a consolidated African-led framework to support sustainable outcomes. In Sudan, Kenya remains deeply concerned by the ongoing conflict and its grave humanitarian consequences. There cannot be any military solution, in my very honest opinion, to that conflict. An inclusive process, a civilian-led intervention that brings parties on board, in my opinion, is the only viable path forward. I have had a candid conversation with friends across the continent, with friends across the globe. I have brought up this issue with President Trump. I have brought up this issue with President Macron. I have brought up this issue with the new Chancellor of Germany. My minister here has been to the UK. We have had many engagements. It is still my and Kenya's concern that the situation in Sudan is grave. It is very serious. And global attention must be focused in Sudan, because what is going on in Sudan is completely inhuman. And the international community must do whatever it takes to make sure that we take charge of that situation. Kenya, we will play our role. We have offered a place for dialogue here in Nairobi. We have offered corridors of humanitarian support where it is needed. We have serviced Sudan in the past from Lokichogio Airport here in Turkana. I have made all that available to the international community, and we will play our part in making sure that we deal with the situation in Sudan. In South Sudan, Kenya reiterates its call to all parties to fully honor their commitments under the revitalized peace agreement. I did speak last evening with President Salva Kiir, and hopefully we will be able to have a meeting later this week or early next week, because the Tumaini initiative that was, in my opinion, a viable pathway towards resolving the issue in South Sudan was sabotaged by political interests. Sudan has finally come back to say maybe we should relook at it again, and I am very open to working with South Sudan in making sure that Kenya supports the peace efforts in that sister country, and we look forward to working with the Troika and all the other partners that are involved in South Sudan. I know there is a feeling by colleagues and partners that everybody is concerned about South Sudan, except you know who. In Somalia, Kenya continues to encourage constructive dialogue between the federal government and the federal member states as the foundation for national cohesion and effective governance. We underscore the importance of predictable financing and a conditions-based transition in the Africa Union support and stabilization mission to safeguard hard-won gains that may go to waste if we do not manage the transition properly. Beyond our immediate region, Kenya continues to contribute responsibly to global peace and security. As lead nation in the multinational security support mission in Haiti, we stand in solidarity with the Haitian people and their quest for the restoration of security, order, and the rule of law. We are now focused on a coordinated and orderly transition of that mission to the gang suppression force, supported by adequate international financing, strengthened command structures, and a United Nations Support Office, measures essential to consolidate progress and prevent relapse into instability. A lot has been achieved, not as much as we would have wanted, but there is progress that had been achieved that needs to be safeguarded, and then whatever needs to be done should be done. In 2025, ladies and gentlemen, Kenya played an active and constructive role in global efforts to reform development financing, strengthen peace operations, and advance sustainable development in a manner that is inclusive, equitable, and responsive to contemporary realities. At the 4th International Conference on Financing for Development, held in Seville in Spain, Kenya joined the international community in renewing and reviewing progress under the Addis Ababa Action Agenda while confronting emerging global financing constraints. Our engagement underscored the urgent need to reform the global financing architecture to better support domestic resource mobilization, sustainable debt management, and the mobilization of private capital for development. At the same time, Kenya's commitment to global environmental governance was demonstrated during the 7th session of the United Nations Environmental Assembly, held here in Nairobi, where Kenya called for the translation of global declarations, including the outcomes of COP30, into concrete action addressing climate change, biodiversity loss, and pollution in ways that are visible in people's lives and protective of future generations. Our leadership in environmental diplomacy also extends to ocean governance. The ratification of the agreement on the conservation and sustainable use of marine biological diversity of areas beyond national jurisdiction reaffirms our commitment to rules-based multilateralism, ocean sustainability, and the protection of global commons. In June 2026, Kenya will host the 11th Our Oceans Conference under the theme, Our Ocean, Our Heritage, Our Future. This gathering will mobilize global commitment on marine conservation, sustainable fisheries, and climate resilience while showcasing Africa's contribution to ocean action and the blue economy. Kenya's multilateral engagement also encompasses social development. At the World Summit for Social Development held in Doha, Qatar, we reaffirmed that poverty eradication, decent work, and social inclusion are inseparable from sustainable development. These principles continue to guide both our domestic policy and our international partnerships. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Kenya remains a firm proponent of a rules-based international order. Amid growing global instability, we reaffirm our commitment to sovereignty and territorial integrity as enshrined in the Charter of the United Nations. As the UN marks its 80th anniversary, the world stands at a critical inflection point with multilateralism under increasing strain. It is our firm belief that a strong United Nations and a steadfast adherence to multilateral principles remains indispensable in addressing the complex and interconnected challenges of our time. We are proud to host the only United Nations headquarters in the Global South and remain committed to providing the political, security, and infrastructural support necessary to expand the UN presence in Kenya. Pangura knows that. She used to send me very long messages. We have this problem, you need to sort out. Now the messages are becoming shorter, but they are still coming. We recognize the United Nations remains one of humanity's greatest collective achievements. Yet persistent funding shortfalls and administrative constraints continue to limit its efficacy and responsiveness. Kenya therefore supports renewed efforts to strengthen and adequately resource the UN system. The defunding of UN agencies weakens multilateral cooperation and diminishes the international community's capacity to respond to conflict, humanitarian crisis, global health threats, and development challenges. At the same time, Africa also marks 2 decades since the Ezulwini Consensus and the Sirte Declaration, through which the continent has spoken in one voice in calling for just and equitable reform of the UN Security Council. Africa's continued exclusion, despite bearing significant share of Security Council's agenda and peacekeeping responsibilities, undermines the legitimacy and effectiveness of the United Nations. Comprehensive reform, including permanent African representation, is essential to the institution's relevance in the 21st century. Excellencies, as I conclude, I commend the diplomatic corps and international organizations represented here for your continued cooperation, your goodwill, and your partnership with Kenya. We truly appreciate, and we don't take it for granted. As we progress in 2026, let us deepen collaboration and ensure that our shared efforts translate into measurable and meaningful outcomes for our peoples and for humanity. Thank you very much for your attention. And as I have always said, I look forward to working with you. Thank you very much. I don't know, just hold on. Yeah, let's take our seats. I am not schooled in matters diplomacy. But I remember, I think it was Chinua Achebe, who, I think there was a church somewhere, somebody was preaching in church. So he was sitting in the congregation. After the sermon, he asked somebody there, are people allowed to ask questions after the sermon? So I don't know whether in diplomacy, are people allowed to ask any clarifications if there is need for any? I don't know. Okay. I can take one or two clarifications if there is anybody who has something to say with the permission of the diplomats here. There are no consequences for asking any question. Okay. My good friend, and by the way, my good friend from Morocco, we did open also a diplomatic office in Morocco. We opened one in the last, we also opened one in Côte d'Ivoire. We opened one in Haiti. We've opened one in Denmark. We will now be sending somebody to Vatican, and I think we've also opened one in Guangzhou, is it? A consulate in Guangzhou. So,
thank you, Mr. President.
Ambassador.
Thank you for your time. I will dare to ask Your Excellency about as a champion of institutional reform at the EU. Your Excellency has spoken with many issues that you have planned to reform at the EU.
Yes.
But I think the CFTA...
At the AU, not EU.
No, African Union.
Yes.
Yes. But there is one aspect that